Nobody talks about what actually happens when a team builds you into a weapon and then can't pull the trigger. And that's exactly what just went down, right in front of everyone, in broad daylight. A driver delivers, wins races, runs at the front all season, does everything the organization asked of him, everything, and when contract time comes around, the door is closed. Not because he failed, not because someone beat him, because the room was already full before he even knocked. Think about that for a second. This isn't a performance story, this is a structure story. And structure stories are always more dangerous than performance ones. Because pace, you can fix. A bad qualifying run, you move on. But when the system itself becomes the problem, that's when things get real quiet in the hauler, real quiet. And that's not even the craziest part. Let's back up, because to understand what just happened, you have to understand what this organization actually built. We're talking about the most dominant manufacturer structure NASCAR has seen in years. Deepest driver pool, most complete grip on the grid. They didn't just build fast cars, they built an ecosystem, development deals, satellite teams, a pipeline that was supposed to funnel talent upward, reward results, create loyalty. That was the promise. Deliver results, earn progression. Every driver who signs into that kind of structure signs on the belief that performance leads somewhere. That's not naive, that's the deal, that's what they're told. That's what they believe when they show up to the shop in January and shake hands and smile for the cameras. But nobody is talking about what happens when the pipeline gets too full. Because that's what this really is. Not a betrayal, not a firing, a math problem, too many contracted drivers, too many promises already made, too many seats already spoken for before the season even ended. And when the music stopped, one driver was left standing without a chair. A driver who, by every measurable standard, deserved one. And here's where things take a turn. It's one thing to lose a seat because someone outperformed you. That stings, but you understand it. You go back to the shop, you watch the data, you figure out where you lost ground. That's racing, that's the deal. But what do you do when the data says you won, and it still didn't matter? What do you do with that? Mid-season, still delivering, still leading laps, still running the kind of numbers that would get you a factory deal at literally any other organization on the grid. And the team that built you looks you in the eye and says there's just no room. No room for a driver running at the front of the field. I want you to sit with that for a second, because I think a lot of fans see this as just another silly season story. Driver moves team, team gets new driver, everybody adjusts, it all works out. But that's not what this is. This is the moment the system's logic broke. Publicly, visibly, with a paper trail. And the rival that swooped in? They didn't discover this driver, they didn't develop him. They watched the dominant organization spend years turning him into exactly the kind of race-ready, technically complete, championship-contending driver you build a team around. And the moment the structure had no space for what it created, the rival walked in and said yes. Factory status, long-term commitment, a central role, a real future. All the things the organization that built him couldn't offer. Not because they didn't want to, because they couldn't. Because the room was full. And I don't think that framing is kind to the team that lost him. They didn't lose a driver. They completed a development program on behalf of a competitor. Every rep, every test session, every piece of feedback, every mechanical refinement, all of it now pointed directly back at the shop that couldn't find him a seat. That is not a small thing. That is your own development budget funding the competition. But here's the part that actually keeps people up at night in these organization meetings. It's not the driver they lost, it's the message the loss sends. The whole satellite system, the whole development pipeline, the whole ecosystem, it works on one assumption, that if you perform, you move up, that the structure rewards results. That choosing this organization over another gives you the best shot at a real future in this sport. That assumption just took a hit. Because right now, every young driver watching silly season is running the same calculation. And some of them are reaching a different answer than they would have 12 months ago. It's not just, is this the fastest car on the grid? It's, does this organization give me a real path? And those are two completely different questions. The first one has an obvious answer. The second one, after what just happened, that's a lot less clear. Think about what that means for the next generation of talent. The drivers in the lower series right now, The ones being recruited. The ones sitting across from team managers in conference rooms deciding where to sign. They have a data point now they didn't have before. A driver ran at the front all year, delivered everything asked of him, and left without a factory future. That story doesn't stay quiet. It travels. It gets discussed in those conference rooms. It gets brought up by agents. It gets mentioned in conversations that were supposed to be about something else entirely. And the team can't spin their way out of it with a press release. They can't fix it with a faster car, because the question isn't about pace anymore. And oh, by the way, the driver they couldn't keep, he doesn't arrive at the rival as a project. He doesn't need time to settle in. He shows up race-ready, technically polished, with 2 or 3 seasons of knowledge built on this organization's own methods. And the first time he lines up against his old team, everything they taught him comes right back at them. Every adjustment, every strategy call, every setup philosophy he absorbed inside that structure. That's not a competitor, that's an inside job walking. Now, there are 2 ways this plays out, and I think one of them is a lot more serious than anyone in that organization is saying publicly. The first version, this is an isolated case. One crowded moment in one unusual market cycle. The structure absorbs it, the lineup they kept is still elite, the cars are still the fastest on the track, and 2 years from now, nobody remembers this as anything more than a footnote. I can see that. The talent they held onto is real. The firepower at the top of their roster is as strong as anything else in the sport right now. Organizations survive these moments. Structures adapt. But that version requires the next wave of talent to look at what just happened and still choose this organization over the alternatives. Still believe the path is real. Still trust the promise. And I'm not sure that's as easy a sell as it was before this played out. The second version is the one nobody wants to say out loud. This is the crack. Not the collapse. The crack. The moment where the system's internal logic stopped matching the story being told about it. Where performance stopped being the variable that mattered most. Where survival inside the structure became the real competition. And if young drivers start internalizing that lesson, this organization doesn't just lose one contract negotiation, it starts losing the argument. The argument that this is the best place to build a career. The argument that the ecosystem leads somewhere. The argument that fast cars plus hard work equals a future in this sport. That argument is what makes the whole thing run. And it just got a lot harder to make. At the end of the day, here's what actually happened. A driver succeeded, completely, by every measure that should matter. And the system had no answer for what he became. You can't fix that with horsepower. You can't outrun it on a straightaway. You can't dial it out in the garage on race morning. That's the problem sitting in the corner of that organization right now. Not the rival that gained a great driver. Not the contract that went somewhere else. The problem is that the most talented people watching this sport just saw exactly how the system works when it gets too full. And some of them are deciding, quietly, that they'd rather build their career somewhere the math works in their favor. Drop your take in the comments. I want to know if you think this is a one-time market situation or the beginning of something bigger. And when you're done, go watch the video on screen right now. Because what happens next in this story is not what anybody is predicting.